Maya Williams sat quietly in the corner of her grandmother's small apartment, her fingers dancing across the worn keys of an old keyboard that barely worked. At 12 years old, she had never seen the instrument she loved so much, but her hands knew every key like old friends. Born blind, Maya experienced the world through sounds, textures, and the endless melodies that filled her mind. The keyboard was a gift from her grandmother, Ruth, who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. It wasn't much. Several keys stuck, the volume was too low, and some notes didn't play at all. But to Maya, it was everything. She would sit for hours, creating music that seemed to flow from somewhere deep inside her soul. Maya's blindness came with challenges that most children never faced. At school, kids would whisper when she walked by with her white cane. Some would deliberately move chairs or bags into her path, laughing when she stumbled. Others would speak to her loudly, as if being blind meant she couldn't hear properly. But the worst part wasn't the pranks or the stares she couldn't see, it was the assumption that she was somehow less capable than everyone else. Her music teacher, Mrs. Peterson, was kind, but often treated Maya differently from other students. During music class, she would give Maya simple tambourine parts, while other students played more complex instruments. When Maya asked if she could try the piano, Mrs. Peterson would smile sadly and say, "Maybe next time, dear. Let's focus on what you can do." But Maya knew she could do more. At home, she taught herself to play by listening to songs on the radio and figuring out the melodies on her broken keyboard. She learned to identify every note, every chord, every harmony. Her grandmother would sit nearby, mending clothes or preparing dinner, always encouraging Maya to keep playing. "You have a gift, baby girl," Ruth would say. "Don't let anybody tell you different." Maya's father had left when she was 3, unable to cope with having a disabled daughter. Her mother worked long hours at a factory and often came home too tired to spend much time with Maya. It was Ruth who became Maya's biggest supporter, saving every penny to eventually buy her a better keyboard. The apartment building where they lived was in a rough neighborhood. Drug dealers hung around the corners, sirens wailed through the night, and gunshots were not uncommon. But inside their small home, Maya created a world of beautiful music that transformed their harsh reality into something magical. One evening, while Maya was practicing a piece she had heard on the classical music station, a neighbor complained about the noise. Mrs. Johnson from upstairs banged on the ceiling and shouted for Maya to stop that racket. Ruth went upstairs to talk to her. "That child plays the same songs over and over," Mrs. Johnson complained. "And that keyboard sounds terrible. Can't you make her stop?" Ruth stood her ground. "My granddaughter is gifted. She's teaching herself to play and she's good at it. Music is all she has." Mrs. Johnson rolled her eyes. "Gifted? She's blind and playing on a broken toy. You're filling that girl's head with impossible dreams." But Ruth knew better. She had heard Maya play pieces by ear that took other children years to learn. She had watched Maya's face light up when a particularly beautiful melody came on the radio. She knew her granddaughter had something special. At school, Maya's academic performance was excellent. She had learned Braille quickly and was at the top of her class in most subjects. But when it came to music, she was consistently overlooked. The school's music program was preparing for their annual talent show, and students were encouraged to audition. Maya approached Mrs. Peterson after class. "I'd like to audition for the talent show," she said quietly. Mrs. Peterson looked uncomfortable. "Maya, honey, I think it would be better if you participated in a different way. Maybe you could help with sound equipment or—" "I want to play piano," Maya interrupted. Something she rarely did. "I've been practicing. I can play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata." Mrs. Peterson's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Maya, that's a very difficult piece. Even our advanced students struggle with it. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer something simpler?" "I can play it," Maya said firmly. Will you let me audition? Reluctantly, Mrs. Peterson agreed to let Maya try, but she scheduled her audition for the end of the day when few people would be around. She didn't want to embarrass the girl in front of other students. When the day came, Maya sat at the school's grand piano, the first time she had ever played on a real piano instead of her broken keyboard. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the keys. The touch was so different, so responsive. Each key produced a clear, rich sound that her keyboard at home could never make. She began to play, and the music filled the empty auditorium. Mrs. Peterson, who had been grading papers while Maya played, slowly looked up. The melody was haunting, perfect, filled with an emotion that seemed impossible from someone so young. Maya's interpretation of the piece was not just technically correct, it was beautiful, mature, and deeply moving. When Maya finished, Mrs. Peterson sat in stunned silence for a moment. "Maya," she finally said, "where did you learn to play like that?" "I listen to the radio and practice at home," Maya replied simply. Mrs. Peterson felt a wave of shame wash over her. She had underestimated this student completely. That was extraordinary." But despite her amazement, Mrs. Peterson still hesitated. The talent show was a big event for the school. Parents would attend, and there would be competition from students who had been taking private lessons for years. She worried about setting Maya up for disappointment. "I'll think about it," she told Maya. "I'll let you know tomorrow." That night, Mrs. Peterson couldn't stop thinking about Maya's performance. She called her husband, who was also a music teacher, and described what she had heard. "If she's that good," he said, "you have to give her a chance. That's what teaching is about, recognizing talent and helping it grow." The next day, Mrs. Peterson posted the list of students selected for the talent show. Maya's name wasn't on it. Instead, students who had been taking private lessons and whose parents were involved in the school's music program were chosen. When Maya heard the news, she tried not to show her disappointment, but Ruth could tell her granddaughter was heartbroken. That evening, Maya sat at her keyboard, playing more softly than usual. "What's wrong, baby girl?" Ruth asked. Maya told her grandmother about the audition and about not being selected for the talent show. Ruth was furious, but she tried to keep her voice calm. "Did you play your best?" "Yes, ma'am. I played Moonlight Sonata and I didn't make any mistakes." "Then that teacher made a mistake, not you. Your talent is real, Maya. Just because one person can't see it doesn't make it any less true." But the rejection hurt more than Maya let on. She began to doubt herself, wondering if maybe everyone was right. Maybe she was just a blind girl with impossible dreams. Maybe her keyboard really was just a broken toy, and her music wasn't as good as she thought. Ruth noticed Maya's confidence fading and knew she had to do something. She had been saving money for months, working extra shifts and skipping meals to buy Maya a better keyboard. It wasn't much, but it was all she could afford. On Maya's 13th birthday, Ruth surprised her with a new electronic keyboard, not expensive, but much better than the old one. It had weighted keys that felt more like a real piano, and every note played clearly. Maya cried when she felt the new instrument. It was the best gift she had ever received. She spent the entire day learning its features and playing all her favorite pieces. Word about Maya's talent began to spread in small ways. Ruth's co-workers heard her talking about her granddaughter's music and asked to hear recordings. Maya would play while Ruth held up her phone to record, and these simple videos were shared among friends and family. One day, Ruth's friend Carmen, who cleaned offices downtown, mentioned Maya to one of her clients, a woman named Dr. Sarah Martinez, who taught music at the local community college. "You should hear this girl play," Carmen told Dr. Martinez. "She's blind, but she plays like she can see right into the music's soul." Dr. Martinez was intrigued. She had heard many claims about young prodigies over the years, and most were exaggerated by proud family members. but something in Carmen's voice made her curious. "Would it be possible for me to hear her play?" Dr. Martinez asked. Carmen spoke to Ruth, who was hesitant at first. Maya had been hurt by the rejection at school, and Ruth didn't want her granddaughter to face more disappointment. But Dr. Martinez seemed genuinely interested, not just politely curious. They arranged for Dr. Martinez to visit on a Saturday afternoon. Maya was nervous, playing on her new keyboard in the small apartment while this professional musician listened. She chose to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she had been working on for months. As Maya played, Dr. Martinez felt chills run down her spine. This wasn't just a talented child playing notes correctly. This was artistry. Maya's interpretation showed an understanding of music that went beyond technique. She played with emotion, with nuance, with the kind of musical intelligence that couldn't be taught. When Maya finished, Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "Maya," she finally said, "how long have you been playing?" "About 4 years," Maya replied. "Since I was 9. "And you've never had formal lessons?" "No, ma'am. Just what I hear on the radio and what I figure out myself." Dr. Martinez turned to Ruth. "This child is extraordinarily gifted. She needs proper training, a real piano, and opportunities to perform." Ruth's heart sank. "We can't afford lessons or a piano. I work as hard as I can, but—" "I understand," Dr. Martinez said gently. "But talent like this finds a way. Would you allow me to teach Maya? I won't charge anything. Consider it my contribution to nurturing a gift." Ruth was overwhelmed by the offer, but Maya seemed hesitant. The rejection from school had made her wary of new opportunities. Dr. Martinez sensed Maya's reluctance. "Why don't we start small? Maya, would you like to visit my studio next week? Just to see what it's like. No pressure." Maya nodded slowly. Something in Dr. Martinez's voice was different from Mrs. Peterson's. There was respect there and genuine excitement about Maya's abilities. The following week, Dr. Martinez picked up Maya and Ruth in her car and drove them to the community college. Maya had never been in a real music studio before. She could hear the differences in the room immediately. The way sound bounced off the walls, the acoustic quality that made everything clearer. But what really took Maya's breath away was the grand piano in the center of the room. Dr. Martinez guided Maya's hands to the bench and let her explore the instrument. The keys were perfectly weighted, each note rang with crystal clarity, and the sound was rich and full in a way Maya had never experienced. "Would you like to play something?" Dr. Martinez asked. Maya positioned her hands on the keys and began to play Bach's Prelude in C major. On this beautiful instrument, the piece came alive in ways that her keyboard at home couldn't capture. The melody lines were clearer, the harmonies richer, and Maya felt like she was having a conversation with the music itself. Dr. Martinez recorded Maya's performance on her phone, not to share, but to have a record of this moment when Maya first touched a real concert grand piano. When Maya finished playing, Dr. Martinez made a decision that would change everything. "Maya, there's someone I want you to meet. His name is Vladimir Petrov, and he's one of the most famous classical pianists in the world. He's performing here in the city next month." Maya had heard Vladimir Petrov's recordings on the classical radio station. He was a legend, a Russian pianist known for his technical perfection and emotional depth. "Why would you want me to meet him?" Maya asked. "Because artists of his caliber understand real talent when they hear it. And because I think he should hear you play." Ruth was skeptical. "Dr. Martinez, I appreciate everything you're doing, but Maya's been hurt before when people raised her hopes too high." "I understand your concern," Dr. Martinez replied, "but Maya's talent deserves to be heard by people who can truly appreciate it. Vladimir Petrov is not just any musician. He's someone who has dedicated his life to recognizing and nurturing extraordinary ability." Maya felt a mixture of excitement and terror. The idea of meeting one of her musical heroes was thrilling, but the fear of rejection was almost overwhelming. Dr. Martinez could sense Maya's internal struggle. You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. In the meantime, would you like to start coming here once a week to practice? This piano should be played by someone who can truly make it sing. Maya nodded eagerly. The chance to play on a real grand piano regularly was like a dream come true. Over the next few weeks, Maya's playing improved dramatically. Having access to a proper instrument allowed her to hear subtleties in the music that she had never noticed before. Dr. Martinez taught her about different composers, musical periods, and performance techniques, but mostly she let Maya explore and discover her own artistic voice. During one of their sessions, Dr. Martinez brought up Vladimir Petrov again. His concert is in 2 weeks. I've been in touch with his management, and they're interested in hearing about local talent. Maya's hands froze over the keys. What if he doesn't like my playing? What if he thinks I'm not good enough? Maya, Dr. Martinez said gently, the worst thing that can happen is that he says no. But what if he says yes? What if he hears in your playing what I hear? Something truly special? Ruth had been listening from a chair nearby. What exactly are you asking? I'm asking for the chance to introduce Maya to someone who could open doors for her that I can't. Vladimir Petrov has connections to music schools, scholarship programs, and performance opportunities around the world. Maya thought about all the times people had underestimated her because of her blindness. She thought about Mrs. Peterson's rejection and the other kids at school who made fun of her dreams. But she also thought about the music that lived inside her, the melodies that demanded to be played, and the joy she felt every time she sat at a piano. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. Dr. Martinez smiled. Then we have 2 weeks to prepare. Let's choose a piece that shows off not just your technical ability, but your musical soul. They decided on Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata, a challenging piece that would demonstrate Maya's technical skills while allowing her to express the deep emotion that made her playing so special. Maya practiced every day, sometimes for hours at a time. Ruth would sit nearby, listening to her granddaughter pour her heart into the music. Sometimes Maya would get frustrated with a difficult passage, but she never gave up. The night before Vladimir Petrov's concert, Maya could barely sleep. Tomorrow she would meet one of the greatest pianists alive and play for him. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. As she lay in bed, Maya ran through the Pathetique Sonata in her mind, her fingers moving slightly as if she were playing invisible keys. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. The concert hall buzzed with excitement as hundreds of people took their seats. Maya sat in the 3rd row with Ruth and Dr. Martinez, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had never been to a live classical concert before, and the energy in the room was electric. Vladimir Petrov walked onto the stage, and the audience fell silent. Maya couldn't see him, but she could feel the reverence in the room. When he sat at the piano and placed his hands on the keys, the first notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the hall. Maya had heard this piece many times on the radio, but experiencing it live was completely different. She could hear every nuance, every subtle expression, every breath between the notes. Petrov's playing was technically perfect, but more than that, it was deeply emotional. Maya felt tears rolling down her cheeks as the music washed over her. During intermission, Dr. Martinez leaned over to Maya. What did you think? It was incredible, Maya whispered. He doesn't just play the notes. He speaks through them. That's exactly what you do, Maya. That's why I wanted you to hear him play. After the concert, Dr. Martinez led Maya and Ruth backstage. Maya's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. They waited in a small room while Dr. Martinez spoke with Petrov's manager. After what felt like forever, Dr. Martinez returned with a tall, distinguished man with a slight Russian accent. Maya, this is Vladimir Petrov. Maya stood up, her legs shaking. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Petrov. Please call me Vladimir, he said warmly. Sarah tells me you are a pianist yourself. I try to be, Maya said quietly. There is no trying in music, Vladimir said with a gentle smile. Either you are a musician, or you are not. Would you like to show me what kind of musician you are? Maya nodded, though her mouth felt dry. Vladimir led them to a practice room with a beautiful grand piano. As Maya approached the instrument, she felt the familiar comfort that came with sitting at the keys. What will you play for me? Vladimir asked. Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata, first movement, Maya replied. Vladimir raised an eyebrow. It was a challenging piece, one that many adult pianists struggled with. Interesting choice. Please, begin when you are ready. Maya took a deep breath and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, the room was completely silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Then Maya began to play. The opening notes of the Pathetique rang out with crystalline clarity. Maya's interpretation was both powerful and delicate, capturing the drama and emotion that Beethoven had written into every measure. Her hands moved across the keys with confident precision, but it was the emotion in her playing that made Vladimir lean forward in his chair. As Maya played, she forgot about being nervous. She forgot about the famous pianist watching her. She forgot about everything except the music flowing through her. This was where she belonged, where she felt most herself. The piece built to its climactic moments, Maya's hands dancing across the keys in the most challenging passages. She played with a maturity and understanding that seemed impossible for someone her age. When she reached the final notes, the room fell silent. Vladimir said nothing for a long moment. Maya sat at the piano, her hands still on the keys, waiting for his reaction. Ruth held her breath. Finally, Vladimir spoke. How long have you been playing? About 4 years, Maya answered. And your teacher? Dr. Martinez has been teaching me for a few weeks. Before that, I taught myself. Vladimir looked at Dr. Martinez with surprise, then back at Maya. You learned to play like this by yourself? Yes, sir. I listen to the radio and figure out the music. Vladimir stood up and began pacing slowly around the room. This is remarkable. Truly remarkable. He stopped in front of Maya. You have a gift that cannot be taught. The technical skills, yes, those can be improved with training. But what I just heard, that emotional connection, that musical intelligence, that is something you are born with. Maya felt her heart racing. Does that mean, did I do okay? Vladimir laughed, a warm, rich sound. My dear girl, you did much more than okay. You just played with the kind of artistry that most pianists spend their entire careers trying to achieve. Ruth started crying quietly. She had always believed in Maya's talent, but hearing it confirmed by someone of Vladimir's stature was overwhelming. However, Vladimir continued, and Maya's heart sank. You need proper training. Your technique is good, but it could be much better. You need to learn about music theory, about different styles and periods. Most importantly, you need opportunities to perform. He sat down next to Maya on the piano bench. I am going to be in the city for 3 more days. Would you be willing to work with me during that time? Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. You want to teach me? I want to help you reach your potential. 3 days is not enough to change everything, but it is enough to get you started on the right path. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Vladimir, that's incredibly generous of you. Generosity has nothing to do with it, Vladimir replied. When you encounter a talent like this, you have a responsibility to nurture it. The next 3 days were the most intense and exciting of Maya's life. Every morning, Vladimir would pick up Maya and take her to the concert hall, where she would practice on the same grand piano he had performed on. Vladimir was a demanding teacher, but not in a harsh way. He helped Maya understand the history behind the pieces she played, the emotions the composers were trying to express, and the technical skills needed to bring those emotions to life. Music is not just about playing the right notes, he explained, as Maya worked through a particularly challenging passage. It is about communication. You are having a conversation with the composer, with the audience, with yourself. Maya soaked up everything Vladimir taught her like a sponge. She had always felt the emotional connection to music, but now she was learning how to express it even more clearly through her playing. On the second day, Vladimir introduced Maya to pieces by composers she had never heard before: Chopin, Debussy, Liszt. Each one opened up new worlds of musical expression. "Try this," Vladimir said, placing Maya's hands in position for Chopin's Ballade No. 1. "Chopin wrote this when he was homesick for Poland. Let me tell you the story, and then you play what you think that sadness and longing might sound like." Maya listened to the story, then began to play. Her interpretation was hesitant at first, but as she got into the music, something magical happened. She found the sadness Vladimir had described, but also hope, beauty, and resilience. "Yes!" Vladimir exclaimed. "That is exactly right. You understand that music is storytelling." On the third day, Vladimir made an announcement that would change Maya's life forever. "I have been making some phone calls," he said, as Maya warmed up at the piano. "There is a scholarship program at the prestigious Whitmore Academy of Music. It is designed for exceptionally gifted young musicians who need financial assistance." Maya's hands stopped moving on the keys. The Whitmore Academy was famous. She had heard their students perform on the radio. "They have agreed to audition you," Vladimir continued. "If you are accepted, you would receive full tuition plus money for living expenses." Ruth, who had been quietly observing the lessons, spoke up. "That sounds wonderful, but Maya is only 13. She's never been away from home." "The program includes housing for younger students," Vladimir explained. Maya would live in a dormitory with other music students her age. She would receive not just music training, but a complete education. Maya felt dizzy with excitement and fear. The idea of leaving Ruth was terrifying, but the opportunity was incredible. "When would the audition be?" she asked. "In 2 weeks, in New York City." Maya had never been further than 50 miles from home. New York seemed like another planet. Vladimir sensed her hesitation. "I know it is scary, but Maya, you have a talent that could take you anywhere in the world. You could perform in concert halls, make recordings, teach other musicians, but only if you get the training you need." That night, Maya, Ruth, and Dr. Martinez sat around the kitchen table in their small apartment, talking about the opportunity. "I'm scared," Maya admitted. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" Ruth took her granddaughter's hands. "Baby girl, you've never failed at anything you really wanted to do, and Vladimir Petrov doesn't think you'll fail." "But I'll miss you so much," Maya said, tears in her eyes. "I'll miss you too," Ruth replied, her own voice shaky. "But this is your chance to have the life I always dreamed you could have." Dr. Martinez added, "Maya, I've been teaching music for 20 years, and I've never encountered a talent like yours. This opportunity might not come again." Maya spent the night thinking about everything that had happened in the past few days. A week ago, she was just a blind girl practicing on a cheap keyboard in a small apartment. Now, one of the world's greatest pianists was offering to help her audition for one of the most prestigious music schools in the country. The next morning, she made her decision. "I want to try," she told Ruth and Dr. Martinez. "I want to audition for the academy." Vladimir was thrilled when they told him. He spent his last day in the city, helping Maya prepare for the audition, choosing pieces that would showcase her abilities and teaching her what to expect. "Remember," he said, as they finished their final lesson, "you are not just playing notes. You are sharing your soul through music. The admissions committee needs to hear not just that you can play, but that you have something important to say." Before Vladimir left town, he gave Maya a small recording device. "I want you to record yourself playing every day between now and the audition. Listen to the recordings and think about how you can improve. But more importantly, listen to how your playing makes you feel." The 2 weeks of preparation flew by. Maya practiced constantly, working on the pieces Vladimir had suggested and refining her technique. Dr. Martinez helped as much as she could, but they all knew that Maya's real teacher had been Vladimir, and now she was on her own. Dr. Martinez drove Maya and Ruth to New York City for the audition. Maya had never been in a place with so much noise and activity. The sounds of traffic, construction, and millions of people created a symphony of urban life that was both overwhelming and exciting. The Whitmore Academy was located in a beautiful old building in Manhattan. As they walked through the halls, Maya could hear piano music coming from practice rooms, violins from other rooms, and the occasional sound of a singer warming up. "This place is full of music," Maya said, stopping to listen. "And it could be your home," Dr. Martinez replied. Maya's audition was scheduled for 2 o'clock. They arrived early and sat in a waiting area where other young musicians and their families were also waiting. Maya listened to the conversations around her, discussions about private lessons, expensive instruments, and years of formal training. "I've been playing since I was 4, one girl said to her mother. "I've had the same teacher for 8 years, and we've been preparing for this audition for 6 months. Maya felt a wave of doubt wash over her. These students had advantages she had never had. They had been training formally for years, while she had only recently started working with Dr. Martinez and had just 3 days with Vladimir. Ruth must have sensed Maya's nervousness. "Remember what Vladimir said? You have something that can't be taught. You have heart." When Maya's name was called, her legs felt weak. Dr. Martinez and Ruth gave her encouraging hugs. And then Maya followed a young woman down a long hallway to the audition room. The room contained a beautiful grand piano and several chairs where the audition committee sat. Maya was introduced to 3 people: Dr. Williams, the head of the piano department, Ms. Chen, a performance instructor, and Mr. Rodriguez, the admissions director. "Please, have a seat at the piano," Dr. Williams said kindly. "We understand you've prepared 3 pieces for us today." Maya nodded and sat at the bench. The piano was magnificent, even better than the one at Dr. Martinez's studio. She took a deep breath and placed her hands on the keys. "I'll start with Bach's Prelude and Fugue in C major," she announced. The Bach piece was technically demanding, but allowed Maya to demonstrate her precision and understanding of classical structure. She played it flawlessly, her fingers moving with confidence across the keys. When she finished, Mr. Rodriguez made a note on his paper. "Very good. What's next?" "Chopin's Ballade No. 1, Maya said. This was the piece Vladimir had taught her, the one that told a story of homesickness and longing. As Maya played, she remembered everything Vladimir had told her about Chopin's life, about the emotions behind the music. She poured all of that understanding into her performance, creating an interpretation that was both technically excellent and deeply moving. Maya could feel the attention of the committee intensifying. When she finished the Chopin, there was a moment of silence in the room. "That was quite remarkable," Miss Chen said quietly. "Your final piece?" Maya's heart pounded as she prepared for the most important performance of her life. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, 3rd movement. This was the piece that had started everything, the one she had first played for Mrs. Peterson, though that felt like a lifetime ago now. But Maya's interpretation had deepened and matured enormously since then. The 3rd movement of the Moonlight Sonata is one of the most challenging pieces in the piano repertoire. It requires incredible technical skill, but more than that, It demands an emotional depth that many pianists never achieve. Maya began slowly, building the tension that Beethoven had written into every measure. As the piece progressed, her playing became more passionate, more urgent. Her hands flew across the keys in the rapid passages, but every note was clear and precise. The committee members glanced at each other as Maya played. This wasn't just a talented child playing a difficult piece. This was artistry of the highest level. When Maya reached the final, thunderous chords of the sonata, the room erupted in sound, and then fell into complete silence. Maya sat at the piano, her hands still on the keys, breathing heavily from the intensity of the performance. Dr. Williams was the first to speak. Maya, that was extraordinary. In 30 years of teaching, I have rarely heard a performance of that quality from someone your age. Ms. Chen leaned forward. Your technical ability is impressive, but what really stands out is your musical maturity. You play with an emotional depth that suggests a much more experienced musician. Mr. Rodriguez set down his pen. Maya, can you tell us about your musical training? Maya explained about teaching herself to play, about Ruth's support, about Dr. Martinez's help, and about the 3 days she had spent with Vladimir Petrov. The committee members looked amazed. You mean to tell us that you've had essentially no formal training until a few weeks ago? Dr. Williams asked. Yes, sir, Maya replied. The 3 committee members exchanged glances. Mr. Rodriguez spoke for the group. Maya, we need to discuss your audition, but I can tell you that what we just heard was remarkable. We'll have a decision for you within the hour. Maya was led back to the waiting area, where Ruth and Dr. Martinez anxiously waited for news. How did it go? Ruth asked immediately. I think it went well, Maya said, though her voice was shaky with nerves. They said they'd have a decision in an hour. The next 60 minutes felt like the longest of Maya's life. She sat between Ruth and Dr. Martinez, listening to the sounds of the academy around her. Students practicing, teachers giving lessons, the constant hum of musical education happening at the highest level. Finally, Mr. Rodriguez appeared in the waiting area. Maya, could you and your family come with me, please? They followed him back to a small office, where the other committee members were waiting. Dr. Williams spoke first. Maya, in all my years at this academy, I have never encountered a talent quite like yours. Your technical ability is impressive, but your musical intelligence is extraordinary. Maya held her breath. It is our unanimous decision to offer you a full scholarship to the Whitmore Academy, including tuition, housing, meals, and a stipend for other expenses. Maya felt the world spinning around her. Ruth grabbed her hand and squeezed it tight. Dr. Martinez made a small sound of joy. However, Dr. Williams continued, we want you to understand what this means. You would be starting in our advanced program, studying alongside students who are 3 or 4 years older than you. The academics are challenging, and the music training is intensive. You would be expected to practice several hours every day and perform regularly. Maya found her voice. When would I start? The fall semester begins in 6 weeks. That would give you time to get settled and prepare for the move. Maya turned to Ruth, tears streaming down her face. Grandma, what do you think? Ruth was crying, too. I think this is what your mama and daddy would have wanted for you. This is your chance to become everything you're meant to be. Maya turned back to the committee. I accept. Thank you for believing in me. As they left the academy that day, Maya felt like she was walking on air. Everything was about to change. She was going to leave the only home she had ever known, but she was also going to pursue her dreams at one of the best music schools in the world. That evening, back in their hotel room, Maya called Vladimir to tell him the news. He was performing in Europe, but he had asked her to call as soon as she knew the result. "Maya," his voice came through clearly despite the distance. "I have been waiting to hear from you. How did the audition go?" "I got in," Maya said simply. "Full scholarship." Vladimir's delighted laughter filled the room. "I knew it. I knew they would recognize your talent. Maya, this is just the beginning. With the training you'll receive at Whitmore, there is no limit to what you can achieve." "Thank you," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. "None of this would have happened without you." "The talent was always there," Vladimir replied. "I just helped you find the right door to walk through." As Maya hung up the phone, she thought about how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. A month ago, she was a blind girl playing on a broken keyboard, rejected by her school's music program. Now she was about to attend one of the most prestigious music academies in the world. But the biggest change wasn't in her circumstances. It was in how she saw herself. For the first time in her life, Maya truly believed that her dreams were possible. Maya's first year at the Whitmore Academy was both the most challenging and most rewarding experience of her life. Living in the dormitory with other young musicians from around the world, she was exposed to musical traditions and techniques she had never imagined. Her roommate, Elena from Russia, played violin and would practice late into the night, filling their room with haunting melodies. The academic workload was intense. Maya studied music theory, composition, piano literature, and music history, along with regular subjects like mathematics and literature. But it was the individual practice time that really pushed her to new levels. She would spend 4 to 6 hours every day at the piano, working on technique exercises, learning new pieces, and refining her interpretation of classical works. Her main teacher, Professor Harrison, was initially skeptical about Maya's unconventional background. He was used to students who had been formally trained from early childhood, and Maya's technique, while impressive, had some gaps that needed to be filled. "You play with remarkable musicality," he told her during one of their first lessons, "but your hand position needs work, and there are some technical fundamentals we need to address." Maya threw herself into the corrections, determined to prove that she belonged at the academy. She practiced scales and etudes for hours, rebuilding her technique from the ground up while maintaining the emotional connection to music that made her playing special. The other students at first were curious about the young blind girl who had received a full scholarship. Some were welcoming, eager to hear her story and learn from her unique perspective on music. Others were less friendly, feeling that Maya's presence somehow diminished their own achievements. "I've been taking lessons since I was 5, complained Marcus, a pianist from Connecticut whose parents paid full tuition. "It's not fair that someone who just started learning gets the same opportunities as the rest of us." But when Maya played, even the skeptics had to admit she was extraordinary. During a student recital in October, she performed Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor, and the entire audience, students, faculty, and parents, sat in stunned silence when she finished. Professor Harrison approached Maya after the recital. "That was magnificent. You've made tremendous progress in just 2 months." Maya beamed with pride. "Thank you, Professor. I've been working really hard. It shows. In fact, I want to talk to you about something. There's an opportunity coming up that I think you should consider." He explained that every spring, the Academy held a competition to select one student to perform as a soloist with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra during their annual youth concert. It was an incredible honor. Past winners had gone on to successful international careers. "The competition is open to all students regardless of age or year in the program," Professor Harrison said. "I think you should enter." Maya felt a familiar mixture of excitement and terror. Performing with the New York Philharmonic was beyond anything she had ever imagined. But the competition would be fierce. The Academy was full of incredibly talented students, many of whom were older and more experienced. "When is the competition?" she asked. "Auditions are in January." You'd need to prepare a concerto, a piece written for solo piano and orchestra. Maya had never performed a concerto before. They were long, complex works that required not just technical skill, but the ability to collaborate musically with a full orchestra. "Which concerto should I prepare?" she asked. Professor Harrison thought for a moment. "Given your strengths and the time you have to prepare, I'd recommend Grieg's Piano Concerto in a minor. It's challenging but not overwhelming, and it has the kind of emotional depth that suits your playing style." Maya spent the next 3 months immersing herself in the Grieg concerto. She listened to dozens of recordings, studying how different pianists interpreted the piece. She worked with Professor Harrison to understand the relationship between the solo piano part and the orchestra, learning to imagine the orchestral sound even when she was practicing alone. The piece was unlike anything Maya had ever tackled. It was longer than any work she had previously learned, with 3 movements that each presented different challenges. The first movement was dramatic and technically demanding, the second was lyrical and expressive, and the third was a whirlwind of energy and virtuosity. Ruth visited Maya at the academy in November, and Maya played parts of the concerto for her. Ruth sat in the practice room, tears streaming down her face as she listened to her granddaughter's interpretation of the beautiful second movement. "Baby girl," Ruth said when Maya finished, "I never imagined when I bought you that first little keyboard that you'd end up playing music like this." "Neither did I," Maya replied. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." Christmas break came, and Maya went home to the small apartment she had shared with Ruth. Everything looked the same, but Maya felt different. The experiences of the past few months had changed her, broadened her understanding of music and of herself. She played for the people in her neighborhood, setting up her old keyboard in the community center and performing some of the pieces she had learned at the academy. The same Mrs. Yard Johnson, who had once complained about Maya's racket, sat in the front row, applauding enthusiastically. "I saw you on the news," Mrs. Johnson told Maya after the performance. "I had no idea you were so talented. I'm sorry I ever complained about your practicing." Maya smiled graciously. "Music is meant to be shared. I'm glad you enjoyed it." When Maya returned to the academy in January, the competition auditions were only 2 weeks away. She felt as prepared as she could be, but the nervousness was almost overwhelming. The day of the audition, 15 students were competing for the chance to perform with the Philharmonic. Maya was the youngest competitor by 3 years, and as she listened to the other students warm up, she heard incredible talent all around her. When her turn came, Maya walked onto the stage of the Academy's concert hall, where a panel of judges sat behind a table. She couldn't see them, but she could feel their attention focused on her. "Good morning, Maya," said Dr. Williams, who was serving as the head judge. "You'll be performing the first movement of Grieg's Piano Concerto in a minor. The orchestra part will be played on a second piano." Maya nodded and took her place at the concert grand. Professor Harrison sat at the second piano, ready to play the orchestral reduction. Maya took a deep breath and nodded to signal that she was ready. The opening of the Grieg Concerto is one of the most dramatic in the piano repertoire, a series of powerful chords that announce the soloist before the orchestra takes over the main theme. Maya played these opening chords with authority and passion, immediately establishing her presence as a soloist. As the movement progressed, Maya felt herself entering the musical conversation between soloist and orchestra that defines a great concerto performance. Even though Professor Harrison was playing on a piano instead of leading a full orchestra, Maya could hear the orchestral voices in her mind, responding to them and leading them in turn. The technical passages that had seemed so daunting when she first started learning the piece now felt natural under her fingers. More importantly, Maya was telling the story that Grieg had written into the music, a story of struggle and triumph, of individual expression within a larger musical community. When she reached the final, triumphant conclusion of the movement, The practice room fell silent. Maya sat at the piano, breathing heavily from the intensity of the performance. Dr. Williams spoke first. "Thank you, Maya. That was extraordinary. You've captured not just the technical demands of the piece, but its emotional essence." Another judge added, "Your musical maturity continues to amaze us. You play with the understanding of someone much more experienced." Maya left the audition feeling cautiously optimistic, but she knew the competition had been fierce. Some of the other performances she had heard in the hallway had been incredible. The results were announced the next day. Maya was in music theory class when Professor Harrison appeared in the doorway and asked to speak with her. "Maya," he said as they stepped into the hallway, "I have good news. You won the competition. You'll be performing with the New York Philharmonic in May." Maya felt her knees go weak. "I won? Really?" "Really. The judges were unanimous. They said your performance was not just technically excellent, but musically compelling in a way that made the choice easy." Word spread quickly through the academy. Maya's fellow students congratulated her, though she could sense some jealousy mixed with genuine admiration. She had proven that talent and hard work could overcome any disadvantage. The next few months were a whirlwind of preparation. Maya worked not just with Professor Harrison, but with guest conductors and accompanists who helped her understand what it would be like to perform with a full orchestra. She learned to follow a conductor's baton through subtle audio cues and to balance her playing with the sound of 80 musicians. Vladimir Petrov happened to be performing in New York during this time, and he made sure to attend one of Maya's rehearsals with a piano accompanist. "Maya, you have grown so much as a musician," he told her afterward. "I can hear the technical improvements, but more importantly, your artistic voice has deepened." "I still get nervous," Maya confessed. "Good," Vladimir replied. "Nervousness means you care about what you're doing. The day you stop being nervous is the day you stop growing as an artist." The concert was scheduled for a Sunday afternoon in May at Lincoln Center's David Geffen Hall, home of the New York Philharmonic. Maya had visited the hall during rehearsals, but performing there would be different from anything she had ever experienced. Ruth traveled to New York for the concert, bringing with her several neighbors from their old apartment building who had followed Maya's journey. Dr. Martinez also attended, proud to see how far her former student had come. On the morning of the concert, Maya woke up in her hotel room feeling a mixture of excitement and terror. This was the moment she had been preparing for since winning the competition. But now that it was here, the magnitude of the opportunity felt overwhelming. She spent the morning in quiet preparation, running through difficult passages in her mind and trying to stay calm. Maya had learned that her blindness, which many people saw as a limitation, actually gave her certain advantages as a performer. Without visual distractions, she could focus completely on the music and the conversation between soloist and orchestra. At the hall, Maya met with Maestro Rodriguez, the conductor, for a final brief rehearsal. They went through some timing issues and talked about how they would communicate during the performance. "Just trust the music," Maestro Rodriguez told her. "You know this piece inside and out. Let it flow through you." As concert time approached, Maya could hear the audience filling the hall. The murmur of conversation, the rustle of programs, and the occasional sound of someone tuning an instrument created an atmosphere of anticipation. In the green room, Maya sat quietly with Ruth, who held her granddaughter's hand. "I'm proud of you, no matter what happens out there," Ruth said. "I know, Grandma." "Thank you for believing in me when nobody else did. Baby girl, you've always been special. Today you're just going to let the whole world see what I've known all along." When it was time, Maya walked onto the stage of David Geffen Hall to thunderous applause. She couldn't see the audience, but she could feel their energy and enthusiasm. As she took her place at the concert grand piano, the orchestra members tapped their bows against their music stands in the traditional classical musician's salute. Maestro Rodriguez raised his baton, and the hall fell silent. Maya placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and prepared to perform the most important concert of her life. The opening orchestral passage of the Grieg concerto filled the hall with rich, dramatic sound. Maya listened carefully, feeling the pulse and energy of the 80 musicians around her. When her moment came to enter with the solo piano part, she played the opening chords with confidence and power. From the very first notes, it was clear that something special was happening. Maya's playing had a maturity and emotional depth that seemed to transcend her age. She wasn't just playing the notes correctly, she was having a musical conversation with the orchestra, leading them in some moments and following them in others. The first movement unfolded with dramatic intensity. Maya's technical command was flawless, but what really captivated the audience was the story she was telling through the music. Each phrase had meaning, each passage contributed to the overall emotional arc of the piece. During the quiet, lyrical second movement, Maya's playing became intimate and expressive. The orchestra provided a gentle backdrop as Maya's piano sang the beautiful melody that Grieg had crafted. Some audience members wiped away tears as they listened to the young woman pour her heart into the music. The third movement was a showcase of virtuosity and energy. Maya's fingers flew across the keys in the rapid passages, but every note was clear and purposeful. The collaboration between soloist and orchestra reached its peak as they built together toward the concerto's triumphant conclusion. When Maya played the final chords and Maestro Rodriguez cut off the orchestra, the hall erupted in applause unlike anything most of the audience had ever heard. People jumped to their feet immediately, applauding and shouting, "Bravo!" Maya sat at the piano for a moment, overwhelmed by the response. Maestro Rodriguez helped Maya to her feet and guided her to the front of the stage for her bow. The applause continued for several minutes, with some audience members calling for an encore. Maya decided to play a short solo piece as an encore, the same Moonlight Sonata third movement that had started her journey with Mrs. Peterson's audition years earlier. But her interpretation now was completely transformed, matured by years of study and experience. When she finished the encore, the applause was even more thunderous. Maya bowed again and again, feeling overwhelmed by the love and appreciation coming from the audience. Backstage after the concert, Maya was surrounded by well-wishers, critics, and music industry professionals. A reviewer from the New York Times approached her for an interview. "Maya, that was an extraordinary performance. How does it feel to have performed with the Philharmonic at such a young age?" "It feels incredible," Maya replied. "But mostly it feels like music is a language that connects us all, regardless of age or any other differences." Your story, learning to play despite being blind, teaching yourself before receiving formal training, is quite remarkable. What would you say to other young people facing challenges in pursuing their dreams? Maya thought for a moment. "I'd say that talent is a gift, but it's what you do with that gift that matters. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. If you believe in yourself and work hard, amazing things can happen." The review in the New York Times the next day was glowing. The critic wrote, "Young Maya Williams didn't just perform Grieg's piano concerto last night, she transformed it into something personal and profound. Her performance demonstrated not just remarkable technical ability, but an artistic maturity that suggests a major career ahead. Williams reminds us that great music transcends all boundaries." Other major newspapers and music magazines picked up the story. Maya's performance became an internet sensation, with videos of her playing being shared millions of times on social media. People around the world were inspired by her story and moved by her music. Recording companies began reaching out, interested in producing Maya's first album. Concert halls from around the world extended invitations for her to perform. Music schools offered her opportunities to study with their most distinguished faculty. But for Maya, the most meaningful moment came a few days after the concert, when she received a video message from students at her old elementary school. Mrs. Peterson, her former music teacher, appeared in the video with a group of children. "Maya," Mrs. Peterson said, "I owe you an apology. I underestimated your talent and I'm sorry. But more importantly, I want you to know that you've inspired all of us. These children have been practicing extra hard since they saw your performance, and they all believe that they can achieve great things too." One by one, the children spoke into the camera, telling Maya how much her music meant to them and how she had shown them that anything was possible. Maya watched the video in her dorm room at the academy, tears streaming down her face. This was why music mattered, not just for the beauty it created, but for the hope it inspired in others. Vladimir called her the day after the concert to offer his congratulations. "Maya, I watched your performance online, and I was moved to tears. You have become the artist I always knew you could be." "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself," Maya replied. "You did all the hard work. I just opened a door." As Maya's first year at the academy came to an end, she reflected on everything that had changed in her life. A year ago, she had been a girl with a dream, practicing on a cheap keyboard in a small apartment. Now she was an internationally recognized artist with opportunities beyond her wildest imagination. But the most important thing hadn't changed: her love for music and her desire to share that love with others. During the summer break, Maya returned home to give a concert in her old neighborhood. The community center was packed with people who had followed her journey from the beginning. Ruth sat in the front row, beaming with pride as her granddaughter performed on a rented grand piano. After the concert, a young girl approached Maya with her mother. The girl was about 8 years old and carried a small violin case. "Miss Maya," the girl said shyly, "I'm blind too, and I want to learn to play music like you. Will you tell me how you did it?" Maya knelt down to the girl's level. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "Well, Sarah, the most important thing is to listen. Music is everywhere around us. Listen to everything. Birds singing, cars driving by, people talking. It's all music. But how do I get better? Practice every single day, even when you don't feel like it. Find music that makes you happy and figure out how to play it. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something because you're blind." The girl's mother was crying quietly. "Thank you," she whispered to Maya. "You've given her hope." As Maya watched Sarah and her mother leave, she thought about the circle that was completing itself. She had been inspired by others, had worked to develop her gift, and was now inspiring the next generation. Later that evening, Maya sat at the old keyboard in Ruth's apartment, the same one where it had all started. She played softly, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. "Proud of you, baby girl," Ruth said from the kitchen. "I couldn't have done any of it without you, Grandma." "Yes, you could have. The music was always inside you. I just made sure nobody stopped you from letting it out." Maya smiled and continued playing, her fingers moving across the familiar keys. The keyboard still had some stuck keys and the volume was still too low, but to Maya, it sounded perfect. This was where her journey had begun, and in some ways it was still the most important instrument she had ever played. Outside, the sounds of the neighborhood continued. Children playing, cars passing by, life happening in all its complicated, beautiful messiness. Maya listened to it all and heard the music that connected everything and everyone together. She thought about the little girl with the violin, about all the young musicians at the academy, about the audience that had given her a standing ovation at Lincoln Center. Music was the thread that wove through all their lives, creating understanding and connection across every barrier. Maya's story wasn't really about overcoming blindness or poverty or rejection. It was about the power of music to transform lives, to create beauty, and to remind everyone that the most important things in life can't be seen with eyes. They can only be felt with the heart. As she played the last notes of Moonlight Sonata on her old keyboard, Maya knew that her journey was just beginning. There would be more concerts, more challenges, more opportunities to share her gift with the world. But whatever came next, she would face it with the same determination and love for music that had brought her this far. The blind girl who had once been ridiculed for her dreams was now inspiring people around the world to believe in their own. And in the quiet of that small apartment, with her grandmother humming along softly from the kitchen, Maya Williams continued to play.